The order of service, printed in the bulletin since the beginning of summer, includes the commentaries for the offering. It reads, people place on the collection plate their offerings to God in the form of money. Some is a tithe, 10% of one's earnings. The rest are gifts of thanksgiving and out of love for one's neighbor. The text from Deuteronomy is a portion of the law that describes the making of offerings to God. When I say law, although there are many rules, the spirit of the law is the focus of our day. The text points to how it is that a just and compassionate society can be created and life lived with the presence of God known and tangible. Recognizing the presence of God required that the widow, the orphan, and the poor were taken care of. Offerings were made. That is 10% of the harvest or the money of one's human responsibility to the common good. Then Thanksgiving offerings were those over and above, given not out of responsibility, but out of praise. The text we read today speaks about the Harvest Festival, appropriate when looking at the harvest that is brought to our altar this morning. The Harvest Festival is called the Feast of Weeks because the grain harvest generally lasted for 7 weeks. Harvest was a time of gladness and celebration. It included the tithe and the offerings, were 7 species for which God, the Creator, was specifically praised for barley, for wheat, for grapes, for olives, pomegranates, figs, and dates. Perhaps in Nova Scotia, the species for which God, the Creator, is praised are apples and lobster, scallops and oysters, blueberries, cranberries, dulse, and tidal bay wine for good measure. In my reading, I learned that some farmers were so specific about offering the first fruits that plants that produced the first fruits were physically marked while growing in the field, and they were grown specifically for the glory of God. On the day that families took their offerings to the temple, some farmers went so far as to place their fruits in baskets that had been crafted with gold and silver thread woven into its very fabric. The baskets were hung on the horns of cattle that carried the gifts to Jerusalem. There was singing of songs of thanksgiving and praise while on their journey. It was a parade of sorts. From village to village, celebration grew in the traveling to Jerusalem. A spirit of thanksgiving and praise spread through the whole land. It's worth noting that the festival, although about celebrating harvest, also includes prayer and ritual giving thanks for God's continued covenant keeping with the people. On one of the days, Shabbat is celebrated, and it is a day of remembrance, and it is kept in thanksgiving of the day that the Torah, that Scripture, was given to the people. All of this food and the baskets that were brought to the temple were to feed the priests, their families, and then to be redistributed to the poor. I have to admit that I have never woven a basket with gold or silver thread. I've never placed fruits in a basket and then put it on the horns of an animal and then gone on parade. I've not sung hymns of praise through the streets while on my way to church. I have, though, participated in praising God the Creator by bringing food, harvest food, on Thanksgiving Sunday to lay before the altar as an offering, later to be redistributed via the local food bank. I have sung hymns of praise and thanksgiving here during our services, and weekly my tithe, my 10%, is placed on the offering plate. On a day like today, when the sanctuary looks like this, when our singing is robust and our hearts are filled with gladness, I get caught up in Thanksgiving. On Friday afternoon, during centering prayer, as I focused on the intention Thanksgiving, a thought darted through my mind. What is the opposite of Thanksgiving? As I pondered the question, I came up with the answer that the opposite of Thanksgiving is ungrateful taking. And as I thought about this more, it's something perhaps we are all guilty of. An example of ungrateful taking. Episcopal priest Margaret Bullitt Jonas, in an essay called Eco-Conversion, wrote these words: "The environmental crisis is the manifestation of spiritual problem. The overconsumption, waste, and greed that imperil us are the reflection of our inability to enjoy the real pleasures and the real challenges of the human condition." As environmental essayists comment, North Americans use natural resources without thought, without giving away a tithe or leaving remnants for subsistence gatherers. We consume, we take, we use without thinking, and often without gratitude. I would like to think that climate action, the I Love Local movement, co-ops, and such have had us at least consider our consumptive ways and have had us make changes in our own lives, perhaps the products we will or will not use. I would like to think and hope that being part of a church community has warmed our hearts enough to the plight of the poor and others, those that Deuteronomy calls aliens, who journey with us for a time, that our hearts are set to give our tithe, our responsibility to humanity, and hopefully from time to time recognize the blessings and abundance in our lives and offer thanksgiving. Maybe it's not so much a life of ungrateful taking that we live in, but more insidiously, lives of thanks-taking and ungrateful giving. I like thanks coming my way. Sometimes I will even seek out thanks from others. There are times I give out an obligation, or I'm guilted into it, afraid of how others might think if I don't contribute to a certain cause. We get it, and then we don't get it. We consider ourselves given, but our giving is often coming from our responsibility portion rather than our additional thanks. We make excuses for not tithing. We live not in the bright reds and oranges and yellows of the harvest season, in real Thanksgiving. Often we just live in shades of gray and beige. In the United States, the Thanksgiving parade has been a thing since the early 1920s. The origin of the parade was the idea of Grimble's, followed by Macy's, big department stores in big cities. The parade included options for their employees to wear bright colors and march in the streets amidst large floating balloons depicting all kinds of characters. It was a celebration of creativity, of workers being in solidarity with each other, of crowds cheering and gladness spreading. It was an era of Thanksgiving. The parades themselves ended around the stores, or at least the route past the stores who were sponsoring the event. And following the parade, Christmas shopping started. And there's the question: was the parade about civil gladness and celebration, or a marketing maneuver, a thanks taking by department stores to increase their sales? There's one parade that started with Thanksgiving at its heart. Chicago's Thanksgiving parade started in 1934 to lift the spirits of the city's residences during the Great Depression. It was an opportunity created for people to come together, and if nothing else, to be thankful for each other. In the discussion of eco-conversion, conversion, Pastor Margaret tells a story about a friend who said her conversion to being an eco-warrior was the experience of returning to her childhood home, where she traipsed through the neighborhoods to find what she and her friends had called paradise. A little hidden gem of a spot, dug into a hillside, covered in low shrubs with a babbling brook. They had a fort there, and they hung out there. When she made it to the spot, it was no more. It had been turned into paradise lost, as it had been bulldozed flat and covered with asphalt. For her friend, this moment changed the way she approached life and living with and in her environment. Today, Deuteronomy directs us to participate in a ritual offering of tithes and gifts of thanksgiving. Returning to church this week, as Pastor Margaret's friend returned to her home, her paradise, now lost, is one of the ways we are converted to living thanksgiving. We are converted by coming here because we are reminded in Scripture that the path of our journey is to leave behind thanks-taking and ungrateful giving. Here in the abundance of tithe, in the offering of first fruits, in gifts of thanksgiving, in songs of praise, in eating the bread and wine of the great Thanksgiving, we are filled with a thanksgiving to spread in just and compassionate living. Pastor Margaret continued, living within our limits, our energetic, financial, and environmental limits, is truth, not failure. It's not patriotic to waste. It's not a sign of success to overconsume. It is a sign of success to know ourselves, to know what we need and what we want, and to share that authentic knowledge with others. When we give our tithe, our first fruits, our 10% for the common good, we have less with which to get in trouble with, less to spend on useless trinkets, less to gamble away, less with which to consume too much. Unless we learn the gift of meeting needs, not satisfying wants. We taste bread that is real bread, real life, a life that's filled with relationship, sharing, and thanksgiving, because our priorities have changed. This is where Deuteronomy is convincing us to go. Steps are carefully laid out for us. Take first fruits and offer them to God. Remember through ritual and prayer the faithfulness of God. Bow to God and then celebrate. Real life, real bread, relationship sharing and thanksgiving by feasting on the abundance from the harvest. Deuteronomy says, after you have set your gifts and bowed before the Lord, then with your neighbors, including strangers and visitors, you are to celebrate with all the bounty that God has given to you and your household. It's here where we experience the experiences that change us, where we experience a conversion to thanksgiving. As a church community, we are making an effort to move from ungrateful taking, from thanks-taking and ungrateful giving, and journeying to thanksgiving. We practice open house on Tune-In Tuesday and the giving away of free scripture. We practice open table with community meals on the first Wednesday of the month and in place, offering a place for people to leave their prayers. We practice open feast weekly here at God's table. We live Thanksgiving in sharing in this coming Saturday's night of art, where thousands of people will come through this building, our house, God's house, and be encouraged to engage in a different experience than the world gives. Above our responsibility to humanity, I encourage you in today's ritual and prayer to give a gift of thanksgiving, a tangible gift that carries on our mission to to be part of what God is doing in the world, so that others might experience abundance.